And welcome back, everyone. Apologies for the delay. There's some technical issues there. I hope they've been resolved now. Um, so just back onto topic with Anton and Chris. Anton, I'd like to start with you on this one. Broad spectrum World Cup predictions for this year.
Okay, no, this is a good one. Look, man, I know Ireland is number one in the world. I think that if I'm correct, the opening match I think is who is it? France, New Zealand.
Yeah.
I think so. I think that will be a good indicator of who we're going to see getting towards semis and finals. I feel that Ireland. I don't know. It's almost like the Proteas in cricket. They can be number one in the world, but when it comes to World Cups, we seem to choke. I sort of feel that the Celtic teams like Ireland, Wales, Scotland, I just feel on the bigger platform, I can't see them. I don't know if they'll beat South Africa and particularly in New Zealand. So for me, I think New Zealand, irrespective of where they are in the log, irrespective of how they're looking coming into the competition, I'm always going to put them as a perennial favorite. I do think South Africa can clinch it again.
I think we're always in with the shot, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. I know, like France hasn't been particularly strong, and certainly Ireland looks like the better team out of the European sides. But I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. If you would, France has something about them in World Cups. They seem to perform. I mean, Chris is the betting man. I'm going to bet on Ireland.
No, you're totally right. I would also be very nervous about Ireland, even though they are clearly the best team at the moment and playing the best. But I'll tell you, I've been eyeing this French team out for a long time, and since they even got to host this World Cup, it just feels that it's just everything is pointing to them and this World Cup. Like this is it. This is everything for them. It's at home. Obviously the Conch title when it was last year in 2007 when we won. So I was always still, even last year when France beat Ireland in the Six Nations, I called that Ireland would beat France because I still thought France were the better team, and they were. But they have gone off the boil a little bit, and if you can even say so, Ireland seem to be improving. But I just think when it comes down to the World Cup, and I hate to say it, it's gonna come down to margins, ref calls. It's very tough to call. Something in my bones tells me that France are gonna get a few hometown 50-50s to get them over. I'm not saying that it will happen, but I just feel like that's how close it's going to be. But to be honest, between the top four teams, and you're right, New Zealand are never out of it. You cannot write them off. And even the books, even though I'm not sure the books will get it done this time, but geez, it's such a pity with the draw, right? I mean, if this was the semi-finals, it would just be a dream come true. But even though Ireland have been super impressive, but then my France that I've been backing came to the party on Saturday, so I'm going to stay in my French cap. I think France at home are going to just when they put it, for me, when France want to, maybe Ireland as well, but for me, the Ponts and a few of the players have a bit more X factor than Ireland. They have one or two more game breakers. So for me, it's still France.
I think, Chris, that it's fair to say that this is definitely a golden generation for the French. I think that's fair.
They've been building for this for a long time. This team that's come through the ranks, and they've been finally we have a well-coached French team, right? They've always had the players, but they were just too loose, right? They're ill-disciplined, weren't sure if they're going to play, but now they've finally got that discipline and they're coached properly, and now we're seeing France be a powerhouse, and if they keep it this way, they shouldn't tail off. But so it's so interesting, yeah.
While we're on the topic there, Chris, so obviously it sounds to me like your heart is saying France. What is? I mean, you may not have done.
Am I head?
What is the betting man saying at the moment about odds at this point in time?
Well, I don't have the odds. I mean, I think France, Ireland are now favorites. Let's have a quick look. But you can get France or Ireland close to just over even money. I think it's not much difference between the two.
Okay.
And then New Zealand come just
at the moment.
Yeah, it's pretty close between the two in the bet, and obviously Ireland's storming at the moment, so they've come into favourites now that they're number one in the world and so on. And it's but but in terms of betting, guys, South Africa is at 5-1 now, 4 or 5-1. So anyone who is wanting to place the bet, now is the time to place the bet on the books, because when we were doing well and ranked number 1, we were lower. So the value is certainly now on the books. If you can get 4-1, 5-1, we're in. That's a really good chance, because we do have a very good chance.
Well, you heard it here first on Forever Sports. Box a bet. And I will give you Chris's home address if that goes wrong.
I'm not saying we'll win, but put a bit of beer money on there and enjoy the tournaments. But it's very hard to call. I don't even know if it's worth betting on France, because it's just too tight.
Yeah, definitely the best way to bet is with money that you won't miss.
Correct. That's the strategy, guys.
So talking about France and segueing into this past weekend's results, I'd like to start with the Italy versus Wales game. A rather surprising improvement by the Welsh, coming out with a fairly comfortable victory over an Italian side who have been looking very good, but in hindsight now over this tournament may not have quite performed to what the expectations were. They're showing glimpses of brilliance, but as we know, glimpses are not good enough to get you over the line. And with 0 wins in this tournament, one has to wonder, was it just a bit of hype? Or have Wales just really improved that much? Anton, I don't know if you had a chance to watch the game. If not, have you watched any of the Six Nations, and what's your general impression so far?
Look, I think the Six Nations is a great product in terms of it's just so good watching, this atmosphere, the stadium, the production. I really enjoy it. And I mean, watching, Italy out there in Rome, perfect day. I also have been, whatever the format is, whether it's, Curry Cup, I was saying earlier, it's nice to see the Griffins performing well. I've been quite happy to see Italy, I think by their standards, performing quite well. And, I think their opening try of the game, they had a lot of phases. So it's like showing some quite impressive rugby. I mean, I thought Negri, the South African, scored. The Welsh, it's almost like I thought kind of impressive I thought it was more impressive for Italy than Wales, even though the Welsh won. I don't know about you guys, but it's just like there's not too much to write home about the Welsh, it seems like.
Yeah, I tend to agree. My general impression was simply that if you were to watch the short and highlights package of that game, you'd see that a lot of what went Wales' way was individual plays. Liam Williams scored a fantastic solo try. And so there wasn't much to say in terms of a progression in what I would call a team performance. And so it seemed like to me a bit of a lucky one-off. I definitely won't be putting my money on Wales anytime soon. I wonder how much time does Warren Gatland have on the clock?
We'll definitely take them to the World Cup, but their rugby is very off, and I think I said to you last week that I wasn't, we did use the word hype. I wasn't on the hype train. I did think Wales are playing badly. They're the worst we've seen them probably in a long time. But I also just watch a lot of Italian rugby, and I'm not convinced by Italian rugby. Like, I thought the game played out exactly. Yeah, Wales got lucky, but they were on the front foot. I just think, even on paper, ability, team matchups matter, and Wales still have more of the class and on the field. And we've been saying this about Italy. I give them credit; they are certainly improving, but they're still not winning tier 1 matches by a long shot. I mean, as I say, you need to look at their record. They don't win almost any at all, and they're ranked 15 and 14 in the world. You got Fiji, Georgia, Japan, all above them. So, I mean, we can hype them up, but they're not a really good international rugby side. They've got a great attitude. Their domestic scene is improving. And I think, it's also like, this the thing with Italy, it's like a broken record. But I actually was thinking about this over the week and watching them again just blunder. It's like almost like when they actually see the opportunity to take the game, they panic. They mess it up. It's almost too big for them in a way. If you watch them if you watch clinical teams, and they've been doing this ever since I can remember, their players are getting better, but I just think they need to just got to keep plugging away. But I hate to use the word limitations, but Italian rugby has limitations. It's the reality. They're not.
I would say, Chris, I totally agree with you, and I think that the hype train was definitely just a little overworked at the time. And Anton, if I could throw the question back to you, and I mean, of course, we are all Box supporters here, so it's very easy for us to endear ourselves to that kind of style of gameplay. But when you're a bottom tier team like that, surely it's better to win ugly rather than lose pretty. And I think that might be their problem right now. And maybe they should be adopting a bit of a lesson from our, well, in the rest of the world's opinion, sort of grunt and push mannerisms in winning a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the problem is sort of like Chris said, they're a union country with limitations. And I think because they so rarely have experienced wins and victories, they're almost not that familiar with like just winning full stop. So I feel like the distinction between ugly rugby that gets it over the line and, gets the points, as opposed to flowing rugby, I get the feeling that they're kind of like just stoked about whatever happens. So they're throwing the ball around and they're scoring, and it's just like, they're beating their previous expectations, or they're better than they were. But I think they would have to go level up. I also, I don't know if they've got the culture or the depth to suddenly shift to sort of like book rugby. I don't even know if there is a kind of a dominant flair of type of rugby. It's like, in New Zealand they play a particular brand or something. I'm not sure if Italy rugby has any kind of brand to start with.
Yeah, an identity, definitely. All right, to jump on to the next game then, the game of the weekend, in my opinion, is England versus France, which I'm sure ruined a lot of Englishmen's weekend, which makes me incredibly happy. An absolute drubbing. I believe it was 54-10. Very possibly the very worst England performance in modern recent history, at least at Twickenham. What do we say to that, gents? I mean, we were all shocked. I certainly was shocked. I couldn't take my eyes off it. France were clinical in every sense of the word. What do we think, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely right. I actually thought, I expected England to be better. France hadn't been really performing to their potential in the comp. So I thought, they're going to come to Twickenham. England got a great record against France at Twickenham, haven't won in 15 years or 18 years. You would have thought that they would have been in the game, but they were absolutely not. So you say, like, we surprised, yes, but let's be honest, are we really surprised? Because England are trending downwards badly, and they've got some issues there. I mean, they've always got the players, they still have the players, but something is really amiss there. I don't know if it's the culture. I think it is still a hangover from. I'm not blaming it. I think that that was a mistake. It clearly was a mistake to go of Eddie Jones, but there's something wrong in English rugby that needs addressing. And I mean, Borthwick's done his duties, and with Eddie Jones in the squad, and at Leicester, obviously Leicester did really well. But now we're questioning the quality. I mean, I love the English Premiership, and they get full houses every week, and it's great. But is it what England rugby needs? And I don't even know if Borthwick is the right leader, because I could be wrong. But I was watching a podcast this week that he's not picking Billy Vanapola for some personal beef he had with him a while ago. And if you start hearing stuff like that, because let's face it, Dom Ran's out of his depth. He's not an international 8, and he's getting battered around, making mistakes. And England need Grant. They need like Courtney Laws at 6. So they need something. They've just gone off the boil completely. So maybe it was on the cards. Obviously, World Cup year. I mean, maybe they do improve for the World Cup. I mean, you never write them off. They have been beaten like this previously, but not with a full strength side at Twickenham. I mean, I think that's the problem. But the French from the first minute, right? That try in the second minute was a beautiful try, and it was just writing on the wall. It was just really brilliant from France. So let's see. I'm going to still put my neck out and say that England are going to give Ireland a game. They're not going to win, but it's not going to be a walkover.
Okay. All right. Good to hear. Anton, if I could throw this one to you then. there's no question this is a terrible English performance, and there's no question that it was a fantastic French performance, which was a recipe for disaster all around. But who takes the blame here in this English camp? Where do we assign blame? Do we even care as Box supporters, or are we just enjoying the fact that one of the leading nations in rugby for a very long time seems to be suffering a collapse?
It's taken the gloss off our victory last. I thought it was pretty good. We won well last in November, but this has taken the gloss off that. I mean, how good were England really?
So, Anton, who takes the blame?
Well, look, I think Chris made a good point earlier. It could. I wonder if it's a cultural problem or culture with England rugby. It's like Eddie Jones. There was so much said about him, so controversial. He's out. And all that's happening, and I think Chris said it perfectly, downward trend. It's just like they've been getting poorer and poorer and poorer. Look, I can't stand England, so I get great delight seeing them get smashed, like very joyous for me. But I mean, this is obviously just hearsay and speculation, but like say, when I was involved with the Lions series, and obviously this is Britain and not England, I found the management and the guys on the brief interactions to be incredibly hostile, incredibly unfriendly, real big egos. And I do wonder, and this has probably always been the issue of England sports in general, where guys get way too ahead of themselves, where they win a game and they think they, it's Football World Cup, they think they're going to win it when they, some team. So you wonder if it's just maybe an ugly, not functioning culture that now is starting to just implode. And I suppose you got to say then, because now you can't almost blame Borthwick because Eddie Jones was getting smashed, and now is it, and they've got the good players. They've got players who a couple years ago would have been, threatening to be number one in the world. So largely the same players. So you got to think, well, what shifted? And I have to say, as Chris said, downward trend.
Yeah.
Just Watson culture.
What's very interesting to me is these players, like Jack van Poortvliet was brilliant for Leicester. Okay, Ollie Lawrence is the international 12, Henry Slade. These guys play so well in an English Prem, but put them in an England jersey and they something's wrong. They don't perform anything like you see Marcus Smith again as well, But when you look at the books, you see how our culture, when someone comes in, they hardly seem to have a bad game when someone gets the opportunity, or even New Zealand, when someone steps up into an international game, it's hardly you see a complete blowout for a train smash from a player. But I don't recognize, because I watch a lot of English Premiership. I watch almost all internationals as well. It's very this English thing is very weird. What's going on, and I would liken
it, Chris, to very much for me. I'm seeing the Bok model. The 2015 to 2019 kind of segment, and I think it started with us smashing them in a final. To be very honest, and I think it was exacerbated by the British and Irish Lions series. And I'm glad that Anton touched on it, and what an experience it must have been for you to be involved with that series, Anton. I think that they needed, obviously they're not all English players in that squad, but a large majority of them are, and they're expected to be front runners in that series. And to get smashed again by the same team who you've just recently lost to, the hostility was felt from an outsider's point of view and a simple spectator that they really wanted us. They wanted to redeem themselves, and you almost felt like that they had banded together as a unit in their hate for the Boks during that series. And so for them to have lost that is a mentally taxing thing to happen. Do you think that? Would you agree with that sentiment that those two occurrences, losing in a final and then a subsequent British and Irish Lions series, how long does the mental effect of those kind of things last on a squad?
Well, I just think when you've got people with high opinions of themselves and egos and stuff, whatever the sport is, whatever code, actually whatever the arena, when that person suffers setbacks or losses, all of a sudden it's hard for them to understand their place in the world, because it's I'm the man, all of a sudden I got smashed, and it's like, well, okay, well, where do I belong? I think absolutely that British and Irish lines, like I just felt it was like quite an ugly vibe. It was like, as you say, hate. Yeah, but I think they've also, they've taken some quite heavy losses across the sort of seasons, and I think, I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how England performs this coming weekend, because either they are like, you know what, we're a strong union, we're gonna bounce back, we've got the depth, we've got the character, or they take another beating. So I know which one I prefer, but I think it'll be really good viewing.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, gents. Let's move on to the very last game of this past weekend. Scotland versus Ireland. In my opinion, a really classy outing on behalf of Scotland and Ireland. And I don't think that either of them would be too upset with the result. I think Scotland showed that they are able to keep up, and it wasn't their day, and Ireland have looked very good recently. And to Ireland's credit, it was a very close first half, and came out and put it together for the second. I think that Scotland are trending in a good way. I think that they're definitely on the up, and there's nothing to be ashamed about of this result. But yeah, all credit to Ireland. They look like they're really putting together a good model, a good team. They're suffering a little bit with some injury crisis and losing a lot of players going into this last weekend. But the big news, obviously, being Ireland's on the verge of a Grand Slam, something that perhaps no one thought they would do, at least in the last couple of years, and on the verge of making history. What do we think of this performance last weekend, and what do we think of their prospects going forward? We'll throw it back to Chris.
Yeah. Obviously, it was all plain to see. Hey, I mean, what a game of rugby! That first half was amazing. If you also looked at the stats of the game as well, the teams were high quality, and Scotland were giving it a go. Well, Ireland were kind of seemingly looking like they were breaking at the seams, and possibly giving Scotland away in there. But I think what ultimately proved again is just how good Ireland are right now. It's again, cream rises to the top, right? They are actually much better side than Scotland. And Scotland, I'm going to use the word limitations because they're not as limited as Italy probably, and also their winning mentality. I'm not so sure about it because they don't also win as much as they do. But Ireland just you'd say the quality just came to the fore, and disappointingly, I don't know, I can't put my hand on it because first half was so good, fell away. And this is what happens when these teams play much better teams play lower teams. It just 80 minutes is long and these teams pull away from each other. I think we obviously all were expecting Scotland to do better, and they were in there at half time. But Scotland are also improving. They've proven that they can beat certainly, the Six Nations guys. They have a nice matchup against Australia when they seem to play them. But I don't see them beating France, us, or Ireland come World Cup time. So.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed Hugh Jones. I don't know if you probably know him, Anton, when he's at False Bay, watched his career. I think he's amazing. I'm so happy that he's finally back in the side because I know he had beef with Gregor Townsend. So it's just great to see that access now of Finn Russell, him, and then Tuipulotu is playing very well. But what their chances, they will beat England. England are not going to be good enough, but they'll win the Grand Slam on St. Paddy's Day. Sexton's going to break records. It's going to be high pressure. I was actually speaking to an Ireland mate. I said, this is the biggest game in Irish history, surely, in terms of pressure. We spoke about obviously winning in New Zealand, which is pressure, but you're away from home and no one's really expecting you to win anyway. And he said last week was the biggest game for Ireland rugby to date. So yeah, I want to see Ireland properly, all eyes at home, most meaningful match. They're going to do it, but I want to see how they perform under these conditions.
Yeah, I think that's a fair analysis. I think this is definitely, in my opinion, the biggest game that they've had in the last 20 years at least.
I think forever, yeah.
Yeah, and very possibly forever. And to be very honest, I think they deserve it. They've played really well and as a unit. And as you were saying on that Scottish side, I have really enjoyed the return of Hugh Jones. There's something that I did want to touch on. I'm not convinced by Duan van der Merwe, but I will just leave that up.
Yeah, me too. He's not the smartest
Yeah,
smart player in the world, I'll be honest.
that's a discussion for another day, all on its
Yeah.
own. He is the poster boy for SA Rugby Mag at the moment, so we'll see what they have to say about him. Anton, your thoughts on Ireland and Scotland?
Yeah, it's an improved Scotland, and you think, maybe come the World Cup, maybe they could conceivably beat, on a good day, one of the top teams. They could get themselves into a semi, or who knows, maybe even a final. I think they're kind of like, I think they're one of the better Scotland outfits that we've seen in quite a while. And it was just like, it was, as you said, it was good, impressive rugby. I think it was like very competitive until about half an hour left. I also, I love in sport, you see these kind of themes that you can think about happening in life. And I think Hugh Jones, he was kind of out in the wilderness a couple years ago. And to see him back in the mix, because remember he was like a wunderkind, like killing it for Scotland, and then just struggled with form, whatever it was that he struggled with. So to see him coming back, scoring the try, I was super stoked. He's known from UCT days, very cool guy who I really like. But Ireland, looking like a well-oiled machine. And I think going back to our discussion sort of earlier in the show, if it weren't for some kind of weird gut feeling, I would be saying, they're really looking like they're in the World Cup, and that they're like looking efficient, just very slick. But I didn't, so I think, as you say, a very exciting game coming up this weekend, and what a moment it'll be for the Irish, who really have been a very incremental improvements over the years. Yeah. I think it'll be such a beautiful experience for the Irish rugby supporters, when they get the victory on Saturday.
Yeah, I agree, and thanks for that, Anton. I think that this is definitely a game of two halves, and I think that Ireland, to me, the mark of a good team is the ability to look like you're getting dominated 40 minutes and still only come off and Scotland realize at half time that, oh man, this game's actually tied up. And that's, I think, a lot of what the Boks have been doing of late. You feel like you might be on top, you could have possession for 80% of the time, but somehow you're still going backwards. And that's what this Irish team has managed to accomplish, and very happy for them, and I'm sure they'll enjoy their Grand Slam. My motto is kind of anyone but the English, so yeah, I had pretty good odds on that. And so gents, just moving on then to our betting segment. Chris, if you wouldn't mind just running us through the suggested bets for this coming up weekend, and where are we looking for value?
So we've actually missed a lot of value on the back of team news, which actually happens a lot. I also said, don't know how much you guys, obviously when I talk about betting, jargon, how much you are following, but we'll probably do a separate show when we can talk through betting and some of these.
We are.
Yeah. So the Bulls were, for instance, I don't know if you know the handicaps, how the handicaps work, right? The bookies place a handicap on a team to even make it even money, so they will make a feeling how good or bad a team is and cap it accordingly to make it a coin toss, and then we go. The Bulls were actually plus 12 on the back of their performance last week, obviously, which was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was watching, but they put the prices out early, as they do, and they try to do, but that was before team news. But now the Bulls have put out pretty good team, and after the team was put out, it went to plus 5, but it's actually now Bulls have gone into favorites -2, so you can see the swing. So when it comes to punting, never mind even like betting on what you think the outcome's going to be, and obviously to basically beat the bookie, if you shoot enough to anticipate, or you have a little member in the Bulls squad on Tuesday that knows what team's coming out, but the bookies don't. When you place in that plus 12 on Tuesday and you sit in pretty, right? But that's very rare. But that's the challenge of bookmakers. But I think this weekend is also very tricky in terms of betting. A lot of high handicaps. So plus high handicaps, higher than 10, a lot more than we would usually see, which is very interesting. And I'm talking now for Super Rugby and obviously the Six Nations, because Italy are plus 14, England are plus 16, and Wales are plus 21. I mean, those are huge handicaps for Six Nations. If this was any other Six Nations previously, none of those caps will be higher than 7. So the trends, because of how the matches are going, it's put these high handicaps. So like I like to play the higher caps. So for me, I would be betting on the pluses. But in terms of what's available on Betcoza on going live today, I have cooked up another treble for you guys.
Let's hear it.
For the weekend. It's so it'll be, I'm going for Italy plus. So let me just quickly explain. Obviously, when you have the line cap, you usually get around 1.90 for your money, and then as it's called alternative lines and points. So it's essentially kind of called buy-in points. But obviously, if I want more points for Italy, the odds go down. You get in a lower price, so you're essentially buying it. And I've done this though with the caps today. This week, and I've pulled out 3 caps and added some more points to it. So Italy, say the cap is 14, but I do think with Finn Russell out and Hagu are basically 40% of their production. Ollie Smith's in and Kinghorn, who aren't any slouches, but I just think you pick your spots, and I think a lot would have been taken out of Scotland last week. And we know Italy love the last game of a championship. Like we know last year they beat Wales. Sure. And I think they come to Murrayfield all guns blazing. So for me the plus 14 is high. So it's plus 21 Italy, 21 and a half at 1.545, but this isn't a multiple, so you put these into so it becomes a treble. Mm-hmm. This might be a little bit controversial, but I've got Wales plus 29 as well. I'll give you my reasons. The team, lots to do with the team that the Welsh have picked. They've got Reece Webb and Dan Biggar back in there. Nick Tompkins is their best inside centre.
Liam Williams is out, I believe, as well with an injury.
Williams is out. The only worry is Reece Sammett's fullback, and I think he's a wild card at fullback. So I think that's going to be France are going to exploit that. But my point is, it's more of a wily Welsh team. They've got guys that have been there, done that, and I think they also do have a good record against France. That does count for a lot. France do battle to beat them. Well, definitely not by 20 points. The highest is like 6 points in the last 5 years. So I think also it's for France to repeat what they did last weekend. I mean, I've seen this often as a trend in bet, and teams don't go to that level again the second time around. That was huge for France, emotional win. I would have taken a lot out of them. They're definitely going to win the game, but Wales are going to give them a good game. I reckon France win by 10 points, 10, 15 points. And then I've got also the Rebels plus 27 and a half against the Chiefs, away to the Chiefs. They also could sound dangerous, but the Chiefs are looking to rest a lot of players. It looks like they're going to have a bit of a different team. The Rebels have actually really shown some grit and dug their heels in recently. And also there's going to be really crappy weather there, which usually means a low scoring game. So when the wind and rain plays into the plus handicaps as well. So 27.5 points is a lot of points. So if you put all those three, Italy plus 21, Wales plus 29.5, Rebels plus 27.5, you'll get a treble multi at odds of 2.60. And I've been speaking to the guys at Bet.coza. They might put this on the site and boost it up. So we'll see if that happens as well.
Fantastic. There you heard it first from our resident experts. Chris, thank you very much for that. Okay. So let's, as we head towards our wrap up, let's chat quickly a little bit about the past weekend's Currie Cup. For me, the big result, huge result, is really for the Pumas against a Bulls side that had 13 of the previous week's 23 URC team in their 23. It was a drubbing, and man, it was good to watch. I think it was the kind of rugby that Italy wants to play, except it got pulled off. And to be honest, it was such a loose flowing sort of style of play. It could have gone either way, to be very honest. But for some reason, the Bulls looked bottom tier. A team that had Wandisile Similani, Sbu and Corsi, Lionel Mapu, these are not small names. These are touted as some of the best players in the country, if not the world. And I don't know, did either of you see this coming, Anton?
No, I can't say I saw it coming. For me, I think it's just it's a massive result for South African rugby because it changed the entire rugby landscape. If we could, it shows that last year's Currie Cup victory for the Pumas wasn't a fluke. And I think if we, often it's like, okay, these unions like the Griquas or the Pumas, they're doing well because the other domestic teams are weakened by the URC or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think now it's like, there was a pretty strong Bulls team. And I just think it's those guys up in Mbombela, hard men out there, they've been working and plying their trade for a long time. And I think to see it, it's almost like, Jimmy Stonehouse, he's been there for a long time now. And so to see, I suppose you see the benefits of as the same system, this, just building it up. And, let's just say, for argument's sake, that the Pumas continue this dominance. I mean, it will change the entire landscape of South African rugby.
Yeah, absolutely. And to touch on this point, it will be the big game that we're talking about. There was a call by Jimmy Stonehouse, some might call it controversial, where he said that the Pumas need more. And he was talking about the competition that he had around him. And I was a bit taken aback. I mean, he faced a very good Bulls side. Admittedly, it's not the same kind of caliber that a Bulls team would put out every weekend. But is that a bit presumptuous of him to assume that the Pumas deserve a higher caliber of rugby?
I think he's getting a bit ahead of himself.
Yeah.
I think they need to just watch themselves, because next thing you know, there's a proper strong team with its URC players and they get a hiding. So I think he should maybe wait to see if he's let's see if they can do an unbeaten run against all the other unions. And then he can start talking about needing more competition.
Yeah, absolutely. He talked a little bit as well about maybe the introduction of some international teams into the Currie Cup, which I quite like the idea of. It's something we actually touched on briefly last weekend. Perhaps, I don't know, it doesn't really matter from where, but, the Japan teams are doing particularly well, improving a long way. I wouldn't see any reason why they would want to join the Currie Cup, because they're actually doing quite well in promoting their own league. But Chris, is that a viable option? Is it something? Well, let's touch first on Jimmy's request, and second on, is there a way to perhaps indulge him without that's in a manageable way? Do they deserve a higher caliber of team?
Well, if you look at their team, you say no. Like Anton's saying, if they came across a full strength Stormers side, let's be realistic. It's could get messy. And I think it's just, with the Currie Cup, this is a second tier team. You got the Sharks B team, who are also just as horrendous, battling. So I just think out of all the teams, the quality that teams are putting, but you see what's happened this weekend now that there's no URC. The guys are coming back, so it's not really fair, is it? He's going to get it if they're playing the Lions, but obviously the Lions don't have as the quality that the Bulls and the Stormers have. But no, I mean he can do it. But do you remember when the Currie Cup was strength versus strength? These teams were exactly where they should be, at the bottom of those logs. So they just got it. For me, lucky that this Currie Cup is washed down. And I just, the Bulls, they've, in terms of betting, I mean, they were, to put it in perspective, they were 7 points favorites, almost 9 points favorite, and they lost by almost 60 points, right?
Yeah.
So tough to call. And they just didn't, there's no point in them being there. But also to say that the passes that Pumas they're throwing around was unbelievable. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The audacity of the moves that they did. So they got what they deserved in the end. But I think that if they're against a team that actually wants to play and full of quality, that's not going to cut it. That's going to get them into big trouble.
Yeah, look, I did feel that their brand of rugby is very sevens-ish at the moment.
Yeah, they were playing offloads. If you watched, almost every player was looking for an offload, and I haven't seen a match like that.
Truly ridiculous. I felt like I was watching Sonny Bill Williams in every position at his prime, just offloads out of nowhere, everywhere. So to wrap up the Currie Cup, because to be frank, the rest of the games all went the way they were expected. We're not too sure how many games you all watched, but to wrap it up, 63-15 to the Pumas over the Bulls, 44-28 for Province over the Golden Lions, 32-16 for the Sharks over the Griffins, and 42-19 for the Cheetahs over the Griquas. So nothing too surprising there. I think the Lions will be a little concerned, in my opinion, about the gap, 44-28 to a Province side. That wasn't particularly great either. They'll be a little concerned about that. And the Sharks, an expected win over the Griffins, and the Cheetahs with a big win over the Griquas. So unfortunately, to my mind, barring that Pumas result, I probably wouldn't have looked at Currie Cup at all this past weekend. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I guess.
You mean look at Currie Cup this weekend come in?
For this previous weekend, I probably wouldn't have looked this way. And to be honest, if it wasn't for this result, I probably wouldn't have watched any Currie Cup this coming weekend either. So that's just where my head's at with that. We've talked about it quite a lot already. Let's look ahead quickly to the fixtures for this coming weekend. Anton, I'll start with you. Some quick fire predictions. I'm going to list the games and you just shoot me the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, so we've got Pumas Lions.
I'm going to say Pumas by 20.
Pumas by 20. Bulls Province.
I'm going to go with, I think Chris said Bulls by 5. I think that sounds about right.
Griffins Cheetahs.
Oof. This will be a fun one, but I think the Cheetahs, I'm going to say, Cheetahs quite dominant, maybe 20 points at least. Maybe
okay. 20 points to the shot there for the Cheetahs. And Griquas Sharks.
I think that's the tightest game of the weekend.
I agree.
I'm going to say Griquas could edge it out.
You edge it out. Okay. I mean, a big shot there. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But there's the Anton says special predictions over there. Chris, could I hop over to you quickly for, if you won't mind, for the Six Nations?
Yeah. I'm not going to be too excited. I'm pretty close to Anton's sentiments there.
Don't stress about that. I'm going to get you to Six Nations.
I think the Bulls, the team they've mentioned, will bounce back. The Province look a little bit light in the forwards. At Loftus, I just think Bulls will bounce back and win this game between 1-7. What's the next one? Pumas. I don't know. Not as big as 20 for me there. I think the Pumas win, but also about 5-10. Okay. I think the Cheetahs beat the Cheetahs beat the Griffins by 30 plus. Okay. And Sharks. I also agree that Griquas can put the Sharks team. Well, to be honest, I need to look at. I haven't seen the team. So if Sharks have brought some cavalry in, then they will win. But if it's going blind, I think the Griquas will put their noses in here and get a little sneaky win.
So we've got consensus on that one. My predictions for the Six Nations this weekend. I've got Scotland beating Italy by, I'm going to call it 7. I've got France beating Wales by 15, and I have Ireland beating England by 12. Those are my predictions. I'm not very good at them, so I would probably do the exact opposite of what I've just said. But to wrap up, guys, I'd like to just throw it back to Anton and talk a little bit about his experiences in rugby. It's obviously a very fascinating journey for him, and I hope you guys also just check out his other projects, which are fantastic. Is it now Tully's Wedding Diaries, Anton, or?
The most recent season is Tully's Joburg Diary. Yeah,
Tully's Joburg Diary, fantastic. Well, I hope you come to Joburg sometime soon. But yeah, check out his other projects. He's got a lot going on. He's quite an inspiration to myself and others who are doing our best to get off the booze as well. I don't know if I'll be as successful as you, Anton, but I can try. Yeah, but Anton, just what are your special moments during your journey during rugby, and what is it? Has it opened up any doors for you subsequently, or is it like two different parts of your life at the moment?
Jeez, you know, I look at it as like a real like blessing, man. And I've had really peak experiences. You know, I think of like, for me, the games I think that I would often prefer were the club games or the more obscure games. And I've commentated in stadiums literally all over the country. You know, I think of a time I did a Pro 14 game between the Kings and I think it was Munster, but it was in George. And there was just like hundreds of Irish supporters there.
Wow.
And it was this just surreal. I was in the hotel and it was just all these Irishmen. And the game before, there'd been a club game in the George Stadium. So it was like completely packed. And yeah, man, it was truly special. And then I think about, for me, 2019 Varsity Cup final at Stellenbosch. You know, it was quite in the opening Varsity Cup ever, 2008, I went streaking and got pretty badly beaten up by the security, rightfully so. But also, you know, I remember just feeling absolutely gutted by UCT. If you guys remember, they lost in the last play. There was a turnover. Marty scored in the corner. So I remember literally attaching this pain to Donny Craven Stadium, and then 11 years later to commentate in that same field for the final was truly one of those moments where you go sort of like, is this real life? So it's just been a really just like a beautiful experience, and I think, yeah, maybe it gave me other opportunities, work opportunities, but I think the thing which I appreciate the most is like the friendships and, you know, yeah, it has been a very beautiful journey, and I've loved everything about it.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of every little boy's dream to get involved in rugby at the highest level in some way or another, you know, and to be able to talk about your passion and your love and turn that into an opportunity really doesn't get much better than that. And so, yeah, watching your journey has been truly inspirational. I really would encourage anyone who's watching this to check in on Anton's story and see what he's accomplished in what is a very short time and what he will accomplish in the years to come. Yeah, and Anton, just to wrap up, if you had to choose one stadium in South Africa as really your favorite, I know you mentioned there at the Donny Craven Stadium, but what's kind of peak for you?
You know, so I live in Newlands. I mean, I suppose there's a bit of a moot one, but I live in Newlands, and my whole commentary career, all I ever wanted to do was just to walk under the subway and commentate in Newlands Stadium. You know, I was also a kid who went, I think, I don't know if Chris said it was 97. I don't know if it was, I remember Province Cheetahs.
Cheetahs, that's right. Holcott Miller forward pass to Adam van Brink at the end. Yeah, behind you. In the student scholars, we're behind the poles. We used to be along the side, if you can remember, but then we threw it away when we used to run onto the field for in the night games. But yeah,
yeah. So I would have been in that scholar stands with you, and I was actually at the game against the Blue Bulls a few years before, where everyone stormed the field.
Yeah, that was it. That was our legacy. We ruined it for everyone after that day.
So, you know, like all I wanted to do was just, and I remember hearing about they were going to move out of Newlands, and I was just like, please, can I get a game? And it was, what year was it? Maybe 2018, 2019, but Province was playing at Newlands in the Currie Cup final. and I got to do the curtain raisers, under 19s and the under 21s, man. And like literally just walking, and there's the smell of hops from the brewery. The commentary booth for Newlands was like this weird little capsule. It's like a terrible kind of thing. Very, very squashed. You can imagine some of the commentators who were former props and whatnot, like they're really quite squashed in. That for me was that was by far my best stadium experience. In terms of, I guess we're not there anymore. I mean, I must say, Bloemfontein has a fantastic commentary facility. Like you've got like these offices which are spacious. You can sit back, eat food.
I wouldn't have said that.
That's the Rolls Royce of facilities for commentary teams. Is Bloem.
Fantastic. Well, guys, we've unfortunately run out of time. I'm sure I could ask the two of you questions for ages. You know, you're both huge fountains of knowledge. I'd like to thank you both. Thank you very much for coming on the show. And I apologize again to our viewers and to our guests for the technical difficulties earlier. As you all know, this is still relatively new for me. And so I will sort all those issues out. And next week, we'll be back with Stevie P and some other guests that we try to procure along the way to keep it interesting, fascinating for you guys. We've had the great pleasure of starting off with quite a hot guest here in Anton Taylor, and we hope to bring him back on the show very, very soon. If he'll have us. I know he leads a bit more of the serene life these days, but if we can drag him out for a couple of fan forums where he gets to vent a little bit at some oaks, that would be fantastic as well. So Chris, thank you very much. We will see you guys next weekend and or next week, I should say. And Anton, again, thanks for your time. Any thoughts to leave off on?
No, guys, just what a pleasure this was. As you said, I've got a bit more of a serene life. I'm actually teaching a yoga class tomorrow morning, if you can believe it. But, you know, whenever I'm in the rugby space, just really just love talking a bit of smack with the boys. So it'll be a pleasure to come back on.
We would love that. Thank you very much, guys. And to all of you, we'll definitely get into the comments. Let us know if you have any questions for future guests that are coming up. There is a link to our Discord as well. So please join in there. It's a great community, and there's someone always in there each day to have a chat to you guys. Guys, thank you very much.